Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a buyer's guide on the Porsche Cayenne. So I have been doing lots and lots of research. I've been looking at a lot of Porsche Cayennes. I own this 2003 Porsche Cayenne Turbo, and I just want to give everyone a bunch of information on what to look for on the Cayenne and really give my opinion on what's good about these. So I am going to be doing a voiceover over top this video, so I apologize if it's a bit jarring. I just wasn't happy with what I had talked about in the original video. So to get started here, the Porsche Cayenne is from 2003 to 2010. That's the first generation. And there are two designations in this. The Porsche 955, which is the pre-facelift 2003 to 2006 Porsche Cayenne. These came with a 3.2 liter VR6 V6 motor, a 4.5 liter dry sump V8, and a 4.5 liter dry sump V8 with twin turbos. In my opinion, I would not really look for the 03 to 06. These are the first generation. They have some issues with the headlight wiring, little quirks. They have issues with bore scoring, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I think they look the best, but in my opinion, I would just skip those years and get the facelift version, which is the Porsche 957. These are from 2007 to 2010. The motors are as follows for that year. They get the more powerful 3.6 liter VR6, the more powerful 4.8 liter dry sump V8, and the more powerful 4.8 liter dry sump V8 with twin turbos. Bore scoring is much less common on the 957 facelift model years. I believe it potentially still can happen, but you really should be looking for a very well-maintained, pampered Porsche Cayenne. It doesn't matter what year, what motor you're buying. You absolutely want to buy the best documented Cayenne. I don't really care too much about mileage. You want maintenance records. You want to make sure that these have been maintained with proper, regular oil changes. The biggest issue with the Porsche Cayenne is, unfortunately, Porsche came out with extended oil service intervals on these vehicles, and it's a real shame because that's not a good way to maintain any vehicle. You really should be doing a 5,000 to 7,000 kilometer oil change on these with high quality synthetic oil. I'm talking about AMSOIL, Mobil 1, or Liquid Moly, like really good quality oils and proper oil change intervals. I think that oil change interval for these from Porsche is like 20,000 miles, which is just stupidity. That is not a good oil change interval. That's fine if you're going to own the car for 3 years or 4 years. Most manufacturers today don't care about the second, third, fourth owner. Of course, why should they? They're not making any money from them. But it's a real shame because these are very, very well built, very reliable vehicles, but they do have to be maintained. So do a Carfax, get a Carfax done, verify proper oil changes, try to find something with receipts, and you're going to have a great time. The first generation of Cayenne from 03 to 06, they use plastic coolant pipes on the V8s. These coolant pipes will break. It's not a question of if they will, it's when they will. These must be upgraded to metal. Most Cayennes nowadays should have been upgraded by now. Again, I would stay away from the 03 to 06 models anyways. The facelift generation still does use plastic in the V8s, but it is far more robust, and it's not that big of an issue. You can still get metal upgrades on those years, but like I say, the plastic is usually not that big of an issue. The big reason to avoid the 03 to 06 is bore scoring. So the Porsche 4.5 liter V8 and the 4.5 liter twin turbo suffer from bore scoring. Now, on the turbo models, it's not as common because the block has been manufactured in a different way. The block is stronger, and it's not as susceptible to bore scoring. However, bore scoring can happen. Again, we talked about those poor oil service intervals. That's number one culprit, is not changing the oil properly. Also, these V8s are very hard on coil packs. So misfires are very common. You'll see them on your marketplace. Porsche Cayenne for sale has a misfire. Super, super common. Coil packs do fail regularly on these. You should fix it as soon as you have a misfire. Because what happens is, if you're driving with a misfire, there's still fluid or there's still fuel being injected into that cylinder, and it's washing all the oil off the side of the cylinder. You're scoring the cylinder at that point. So again, maintenance is so important on the Cayenne, especially on the V8s. And bore scoring, the internet makes it out to be this huge thing, and I think to some extent it is, but I can't say how prevalent it is or how often this is going to happen. Again, go on your marketplace, you'll see lots of Cayennes with engine ticks. That's bore scoring. Oil burning at startup, that's bore scoring. Rough idling, that's bore scoring. Basically, it's useless. You either have to put in a replacement motor or, as I like to say, drive it into the river. So I would just avoid all that kind of stuff altogether, and I would buy a facelift 957 version, like I say, from 07 to 2010. If you want a budget-oriented Cayenne, I'm not saying inexpensive, cheap, or anything like that, but if you're looking for a budget SUV and you want a Porsche Cayenne, I highly recommend getting the facelift 3.6 liter V6 model. A lot of people say that it's very underpowered. The 3.6 is not really the case. It's about 290 horsepower, which is adequate. It's not that bad, and most good SUVs are underpowered. CRVs, RAV4s, all that kind of stuff. The first generation stuff, the good stuff, it's underpowered. It still doesn't mean it can't off-road very well. And in the Cayenne's point, the Cayenne has a true good all-wheel drive system with an actual transfer case. It has a 2-speed transfer case that can lock. These are very capable off-road, and you're going to have a great time even if it is the V6. So the VR6 3.6 liter, like I say, has more power. It's direct injected, and it is a very, very reliable motor. They go for 300,000, 400,000 kilometers without any problems. Again, as long as oil changes have been kept up. So that's what I would go for if I'm looking for a Cayenne. And I actually have sold this 03 Cayenne Turbo. Luckily, I didn't have really many problems with this vehicle, but I do want to get that facelift version. I want some of the little modern touches, modern headlights, just a few little things that are better on the facelift version. This 03 here was the air suspension model. So turbos came with air suspension, and I think you could option air suspension on the V8s as well. I would stay away from the air suspension, just me personally. Porsche did build a very robust air suspension. The problem is when it fails, it's very, very expensive, of course. So if you're trying to get into a Cayenne on a budget, and you want a very reliable, just turn the key and go, I would stick with the normal V8 model in the facelift version or the V6. The turbo models are also much more expensive to maintain. For instance, if you need to change the motor mounts, the motor has to come out on the turbo. It's not a very economical vehicle. Gas mileage is horrid, as you would expect. Unless you really want that power, I would avoid the turbo models. Get a pre-purchase inspection. It doesn't matter what vehicle you're buying. You should always get a pre-purchase inspection from a good German specific mechanic who knows Cayennes, preferably knows Porsches, and it's cheap insurance, right, to find the best one that you possibly can. So yeah, I would highly recommend get a pre-purchase on them. Some other issues, again, common with almost all German cars, valve cover gaskets. You're going to be looking at around $800 Canadian to do both valve cover gaskets on the V8 model. It is what it is. That's something definitely to look out for. The rear hatch, the struts. The rear hatch is very heavy on a Cayenne. These are very heavy vehicles. That's probably why they're so nice off-road, is that they have a nice weight to them. They can kind of get through everything. The seats are incredibly comfortable. I mean, they are a luxury SUV, and the road handling and the wind noise and road noise is very, very low on these vehicles because they are a heavy luxury SUV with very promising off-road capabilities. But like I say, the hatch is very heavy. Just watch out for that. Brakes. Pads and rotors are not crazy expensive. You can get them on Rock Auto, some good quality ones. You can change them yourself if you want to. Very straightforward. I do believe the Turbo S has much more expensive brakes, so just note that. Have like an adapter wiring harness between the headlight and the rest of the harness, and those tend to fail. Mine has been fixed by Porsche, but it's just one of those first generation 955 issues. Like I say, that's why I'm saying avoid the 03 to 06 if you don't want a whole bunch of headaches. I would go for the facelift version. It's just a much better vehicle. But yeah, really to wrap this up, like I say, I think the V6 is really a great buy. I think a lot of people are overlooking this because, you know, if you read it on the internet and stuff like that, people say avoid the V6 because it's really underpowered. If you're buying that facelift version with the bigger 3.6 direct injection, you're close to 300 horsepower. It's still going to be a decent motor for that. If you want a little bit more grunt, get that 4.8 liter V8. Again, make sure regular, frequent oil changes have been done, and just try to find the best example as you can. Cayennes came from the factory with galvanized steel. You shouldn't find any rust. If you do, there potentially has been an accident, something's been repaired incorrectly, something like that. So again, try to look for the cleanest example that you can. Check underneath it. Get a pre-purchase inspection, that type of thing. You want to make sure that you try and find the best version possible. So watch out also for the drive shaft center support bearings. They do eventually fail on Cayennes. It's not crazy expensive, but that's something to watch out for, any noise in the center of the vehicle. That's my buyer's guide on the Cayenne, things that you should look for, and definitely check out other videos on my Cayenne and other videos on my channel. Thanks, everyone.